If psychology and pop culture had a baby, they'd call it Shrink Tank.
A new paper reveals more intelligent people are quicker to learn and unlearn.
90% chance that there's some weird animal out there.
Alan Stern's been doing this forever, and far more extreme. From Nashville and Charlotte, this is the Shrink Tank Podcast. And welcome, everybody. If you're joining us for the first time, a special welcome to you. If you're coming back for more, thanks so much for joining us again. I'm Dave Verhagen in Nashville. We've got a great show for you. Our trending topic today is the Avengers, Infinity War, and Affinity War, probably. But first, we're going to meet our Charlotte panel. Dr. Emma Kate Wright is here. Emma Kate, how are you?
I'm doing well, Dave. How are you?
I am fine. And are you, in general, a Marvel Comics universe or Marvel Cinematic Universe fan?
Oh, yes. I've seen, I think, all of them.
Awesome. And Dr. Frank Gaskell is here. Frank, I know that you got burnt out on superhero movies. Are you interested in this movie at all?
Well, yeah, if you listen back to our other episodes, I have said I'm not going to go. And because of FOMO, I bought many tickets well in advance. So, yeah, I'll be seeing it.
Little FOMO for Franco. And Jonathan Hedderly's here. Jonathan, how are you?
I'm doing well, Dave. How about you?
I am fine. Is this movie of any interest to you?
It is. I think I've gotten a little bit burned out by superhero films, but I'm really curious to see how they stick this landing. So it's almost like if you go through a really long book, even if you start to get weary, you want to find out how it ends. So I don't know if in phase 2 or whatever phase we are in Marvel, if I'll really continue to watch all the films like, for the most part, I have in the first half. But I'm really interested in the arc of Black Panther. But most of the other superheroes at this point, I could be done with and be just fine.
Yeah.
All right. Well, we're going to talk about the movie in our second segment. But first, Jonathan, who is our certified Asian, he trolls the internet each week, and he finds a great story of psychology in the news for our first segment that we call
Being Human.
So apparently there is research going on where studying depressed robots we're hoping can teach us about our own mental health. So some research is looking at the idea of failure and flexibility and the correlation between why humans might get depressed and what we can learn from artificial intelligence and its flexibility or its learning rate. So imagine a robot with a hardware malfunction and it has to figure out a new way of grasping information. People are hoping by studying artificial intelligence and its flexible learning, we might learn about how the mind and the brain of a depressed individual might function and therefore find some remedies and solutions to it. So, Frank, as our resident depressed person, what do you make of this research?
I was hoping this was going to be a robot that was depressed because that sounds pretty cool. But unfortunately, it's not about depressed robots or depressed computers.
And that depressed you?
Yes, it made me depressed. But I found it very interesting and very relatable, not as a robot, but as to depression and anxiety. And the way it was talking about a computer, you have to find sort of its right speed of learning. And if it's too fast, then it doesn't remember or it doesn't learn from mistakes. If it's too slow, it can't advance. And the idea of the brain as a similar flexible organ, that if you're depressed, you think of your computer slowing down, it's not flexible, it's not learning. If you're going too fast, then you don't learn from your mistakes. It's a similar model. So these computer models are helping understand how the brain works. And I take an antidepressant, and when I'm on it, I feel more flexible. Like I feel like I can adjust and adapt. And when I'm not on it, I mean, forget about it. It's not happening. But the cool example from this too is we can work on computers now to try and find that sweet spot. But they asked a question, well, what if this robot or computer is a light year away from Earth? These computers are going to have to learn how to adjust themselves on their own, which, again, goes back to that idea of artificial intelligence.
Yeah, and well, just to kind of piggyback on that, so the idea that, okay, if those computers are a light year away, same thing goes for when an individual comes for treatment, for counseling and therapy with depression. We're trying to teach them specific skills that they can use in the current present moment to try and manage difficult emotions. But then also we hope that they can take those skills with them in the future to be able to solve, and challenge negative thinking as that comes up in their day-to-day lives.
So you work with astronauts. That's what you're saying?
Yes, I work in outer space.
Okay, cool. That's awesome.
You actually do sometimes work in outer space.
Because I can't focus. Thanks.
Space.
Yeah, I was hoping it was about depressed robots too, because like we said last week when we were talking about artificial intelligence, I'm waiting for the robots to get all angry, pissed off, and depressed, and then rise up and turn us into human batteries. So that's really my hope.
And Dave, I have to tell you, 2 weeks ago we had AspieCon, and there was a robotics group there. There was this robot, as big as like a coffee table, and it was horrifying. I mean, horrifying. It was loud, and it could move like in every direction and spin. And I was terrified of this. Our sound engineer was there. We were afraid of it.
Because you're not afraid of anything,
Right.
Frank.
I mean, Emma Kate, you saw this robot. Were
I
you
did.
afraid of it?
No, I thought it was pretty cool.
Ugh,
Frank,
no.
you're afraid of mirrors.
Right.
So.
Well,
Looking at
yeah,
yourself.
but still, it's robots.
Scary.
Well, if you have questions or comments or opinions about depressed robots or any of the stuff that we're talking about in this segment, you can write us at feedback@shrinktank.com. We'd love to hear from you. And if we get letters or notes from you, we'd love to respond to them on the podcast. And let's shift to our trending topic today, which is Avengers Infinity War. And I'm going to, right out of the gate, I'm going to make a prediction. I think this is going to be the first or second biggest movie at the box office of all time. Anybody want to take that bet?
I'll take that bet as long as we use adjusted dollars.
Okay. I mean, sure.
Sure, we'll use adjusted dollars.
Yeah.
Okay.
No, I agree. I think because there are so many different characters and so many different, movie genre, or not, I don't want to say genre, but all these different storylines from these different movies are coming together. And so that has a very large pool of interest.
I predict that it's going to come close, but one of the things that has working against it is the last three films to break the overall box office score, Titanic, Avatar, and The Force Awakens, they all were released in the holiday season. And so one of the challenge
Black Panther just cracked the top three.
that is true. But one of the challenges of summer is there's usually an oversaturation of like-minded, event films that sometimes people start to see it once or twice, where usually you have to get people to see it 3 or 4 times in order for it to generate that type of box office draw. And it's a really long movie. They're talking about a superhero movie that's like 2 hours and 40 minutes long.
Wow.
And it's only part one.
And it's only part one.
Of 2? I didn't know there was a part 2.
Yeah, this is
It's the Infinityist War is part 2.
the budget for these two movies is $1 billion, which is amazing.
$1 billion.
$1 billion, but I'll tell you something equally amazing. Apple announced they are doing Isaac Asimov's Foundation as a TV show with a budget of $1 billion.
No.
Yes, look it
can't
up,
be
buddy.
true.
Look it
I
up.
will look it up. $1 billion
Insane.
$1 billion. Look it up.
for one season? For a season?
I don't know, but it's for the Foundation series. I don't know what that means.
I'll look it up.
I'd just like for us to pay our teachers more. That's all.
Yeah.
Like, that is so much money that we're spending on one film
That's
or
Emma
one
Kate's
TV
doctor's
show.
orders. Pay
Sorry.
teachers more.
Let's please.
Oh, mercy. All right, so I want to ask an honest question here. This film is a culmination of all these plot lines and all these characters and things about infinity stones, and one's here and one's in somebody's head and something. I'm asking this honestly. Have you really followed all these characters and plot lines? Like, could you, if someone came in and held a gun to your head and said, "Tell me the whole thing," at least in the broad strokes. Could you do it? Emma Kate, could you do it?
No, I could do that with Harry Potter, but not with this.
All right. Frank, could you?
Not a chance.
Or Jonathan?
I think I could do a decent job, but you should really ask the question, do I care? Like,
There we
I have
go.
a lot of worthless, information in my head. And it's one of those things that I could probably do an outline, but I really don't care. I'm not invested in the larger universe that it's built.
That is a different question. But so can you give us, with these Infinity Stones, can you give us the broad strokes of it?
Well, there's a bunch of them, and Thanos, who's a big bad guy from outer space, wants to get them because then he will be able to control pretty much all the universe and have
Why is your
the
voice
people.
like that?
and in a lot of ways, that type of energy has also contributed to some of the superpowers and some of the events, with Thor or with Loki. And with Vision. And so in order for him to accumulate it, he has to not only take them from superheroes, but it may lead to the demise of them.
Oh, yeah, somebody's going to die big time.
All right. So let's go to that point first before we get into some of the deeper stuff. Any guesses about who's going to die? And by the way, if you're listening, we've not seen the movie at this point, and we don't know. We don't have any inside information. This is just pure guessing. So, Emma Kate.
Well, okay, because I know in the comics, Captain America passed away. Like, he died. So my
Captain America passed away.
Right.
He got real old.
I know. Okay.
He was surrounded by his loved ones.
Yeah.
Well, he
to
is
call in
old,
hospice.
right? He's like really, really old.
Donations can be
went to a
made.
farm in
I know
Virginia.
how I said that. But yeah, no, I think if based on just the comics, my guess would be that he would die, but I don't know. I think now we're actually at this point where historically they haven't been able to kill these people off because they knew they were going to make 3 more movies. So now we're at the point where they can.
Frank, what do you think?
It's going to be more than one character, but it'd be Captain America. I think something pretty horrific is going to happen to Spider-Man. And the thing that would make these movies better for me is if they were rated R. Because come on. Yeah, like Logan. Like, we got to see the blood and superheroes curse and all that kind of stuff.
So why do you think something horrific will happen to Spider-Man?
I think we need something we have a heart for him. He's a funny guy. He's young. He seems to be sweet, naive high school kid. We got to tear him up pretty bad. He needs to experience some legit trauma if he's going to become stronger.
All right. I buy it.
Interesting. Yep.
Jonathan, you have a theory?
I think Captain America is going to pass away. I'm interested to see, though, is it a cliffhanger? So they set it up in the first film, but it doesn't really ultimately happen until the second film. I think probably at least one character from Guardians of the Galaxy will probably meet a demise. The only person I feel fairly confident won't is Black Panther. I think the success of that film, but also I think how Marvel figured out how to successfully world build that whole Wakanda nation and all the other characters, to me, it would seem like an incredible waste to then just immediately sort of tear it down.
I would also say that I think this first movie's going to be really good, but I think the second movie is going to make me very, very angry because they're going to cheat. Is one of the Infinity Stones is a time-traveling stone, which means they can just go back and save whoever they killed. So that's going to be really annoying unless they legitimately kill somebody and say you're done. And also, I think it's possible Iron Man could be killed.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I'd add, too, there was some reference in the last Thor, so this is a slight spoiler, where I think it was Banner, so who's Hulk, made a comment about being afraid that he was going to get lost and that essentially the Hulk would take over. And my guess is that we might see that actually happen in this movie.
So, speaking of Hulk and some of the characters you're talking about, do you have a character in this world of this Marvel Cinematic Universe that really is compelling for you personally, that you really feel attached to or just like? Any character stand out for you, Jonathan?
The characters that stand out to me the most?
Well, for you personally, like ones that you just like, you have you feel connected to, some attachment to.
I'm all about the relationship between Captain America and Bucky Barnes. So and I think one of the shortcomings of Marvel are their villains, but I think when there is a direct personal relationship to villains, that creates a stronger storyline. So quite honestly, that's really the only one I'm still kind of interested in, because it appeals to a part of me, that old-fashioned patriotic part of Captain America that's having to reconcile the modern-day complexity of the world in the 21st century.
Yeah, I really
Kate.
liked the dynamics, and this is from the Guardians series, with Drax, and essentially just like that kind of dry humor. I thought he was really funny, but I also like the dynamics between Rocket and Baby Groot, because I always like that one kind of comic relief character, and I feel like little Baby Groot is a good one for that.
Yeah, I love Drax because he's also an Aspie or Asperger's, and Rocket is hilarious. I love the duos where there's banter back and forth and comedy, but my favorite superhero is Iron Man, and that's just
Why?
technology. I love the technology. I think I like all the gadgets he's got. His car's cool. He's snarky, super confident. Nothing riles him. He's just cool, super cool.
He's also very narcissistic.
Well, you say it like that. I mean, come on. Jeez.
So, how do you think that this? I mean, this has been a masterwork in cinema of bringing all these characters to the screen and moving them toward this conclusion. It's really been, I mean, whether there's been some ups and downs in the films, whether there's been some fatigue about all the superheroes, you got to hand it to them that they've really done. This will be something you look back on and say, man, they did that right. How did they do it right where DC couldn't get it together, still hasn't gotten it together? What is it about this that makes this work as a film world?
My guess is, because and correct me if I'm wrong, didn't this all start with the Iron Man series?
Yes.
Right? Yeah, I mean,
Yes.
those movies, I mean, the humor, some of the explosions and fight scenes and the writing was really solid in the beginning. And then they realized, okay, well, so this worked. Here's our model. This is the approach that we're going to take. And so for a while, I think that model, we've talked about this world building, they figured out this method that people would buy into, and then there are ways that they could weave in these other plot lines from these different stories. So, I mean, that's my guess, is that they kind of just found this sweet spot in terms of their approach for the storylines and how they portray these characters.
What's crazy about that first Iron Man? There wasn't really a script. There was an idea, but it was just pretty much ad-libbed, all of Iron Man stuff.
Really?
Yeah, it was pretty crazy.
That.
I listened to an interview with him talking about it, and that's just Robert Downey Jr. right there.
Well, and you have to hand it to the head of Marvel film, Kevin Feige, I believe is his name, to where he's sort of the mastermind behind this. And if you think about a lot of other franchises, whether it's Star Wars or Star Trek, at some point they would hand off the world building or overseeing the product to someone else, and you might start to see philosophical differences or changes that in some ways started to tangle up the world that they were creating. The other interesting thing about Marvel, and I apologize, I can't remember where I read this, but this is not an original thought of my own. Unlike the DC films, Marvel really doubled down on the characters and everybody knows who Iron Man is. Everybody knows who Captain America is. There's not a lot of wasted time of like hiding their identity and some of those superficial kind of gags or challenges that other superheroes face. So for them, you really built a relationship with those superheroes, with those characters, and the other thing I think really helped. Whereas like maybe Star Wars or Star Trek sometimes maybe doesn't stick the landing, is you also don't have all of the same characters in every single movie. So you can build a little bit of a world through Thor or the Guardians of the Galaxy, and then you circle back to Captain America or Iron Man. So even though there's like 18 or 19 films, the biggest superheroes might only be in about 5 or 6 of those films.
And also, just to state the obvious, that it feels like from very early on, it was well conceived in terms of how the characters connected to each other and where the interplay between them, where that could take them. So some of it, I think, was improv from a development standpoint, but a lot of it was very deliberate. It was very planned. You get the feeling, like a lot of things that Disney has its hand on, that there's an intentionality about it, and that makes a big difference. So we already referred to narcissism with Tony Stark, and we've also, you, Frank, talked about Peter Parker needing to experience some trauma in order to go to the next level as a character. Any other psychological themes that you feel like emerge from this world that are important, significant, really stand out to you? Emma Kate, how about you?
I'm trying to think off the top of my head, and the only thing I can really think of is how Rocket probably has like conduct disorder, like oppositional defiant disorder, because he just does whatever he wants. But that's hilarious, and in reality, that's not very fun. So that's not really the best example. So
no, I think that's a great example. I mean, he's straight up conduct disorder.
Yeah, like he literally is like, "Oh, you don't want me to do this?" Wham, and then he does it. So,
and I alluded to it earlier about Drax being an Aspie. His special interest is knives, and he's got freight train brain trying to hunt down this guy that killed his family. His social skills are atrocious when it comes to the second movie with the girl, but he's literal. So when Star-Lord says he's going to slit his throat and runs his finger across his throat, and Drax says, "Why would I run my finger across his throat?" And another guy says, "Yeah, he doesn't catch metaphors." And Drax says, "Nothing goes over my head. Metaphors go over his head." He said, "Nothing can go over my head. I am too fast. I would catch it." I just love that. It's fantastic.
I love that character. He's one of my favorite characters in the whole
Me too.
universe for it. Yeah. Jonathan, anything stand out to you psychologically?
Well, I think, especially with the Avenger films, the group dynamics of bringing strong-willed or determined people together and how they can best work as a unit, I think that was the first Avengers movie right then and there. The other thing that is that these characters most of them aren't working through deep trauma. So it really doubles down on the positive psychology, moral development, character development, being in the service of other people. And I think that's why, quite honestly, it has been much more successful than the DC properties, is that even though some people think that it's too shallow and superficial, that can appeal to all ages across demographics of like having a meaningful life and how you can make a difference without having to go through deep trauma. So that's my 2 cents.
Right. Or if you go through deep trauma, that you come out on the other side stronger, because what we know in positive psychology is there's post-traumatic stress disorder. When you sometimes if you experience a trauma, you might have that. But there's also what we would call post-traumatic growth, where somebody becomes a more resilient, a more determined, a more moral, or you fill in the blank, better version of themselves. And that's depicted over and over again in this world. So it's a picture of post-traumatic growth in many cases. Yeah. Do you think, I have a sense that Hawkeye is going to play a big role in this particular film, and he's got some stuff lurking in there. Any thoughts about him as a character?
His family's going to be killed. I think there's no question about that.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. Yeah, they're gone.
There's going to be something unique about Hawkeye because he's been suspiciously absent with all of the marketing leading up to the film, and that's one of the big questions everybody has is, where's Hawkeye?
Well, and he's the only guy where we see his family. We see kind of what his home life is like. They're goners, man.
Yeah, there's definitely something there.
They're goners.
I don't know if this was like a edit thing that somebody, concocted on Reddit, which I peruse sometimes, but it almost looked like when they put the different posters for the advertisement for this film, Hawkeye was actually across all of them. So I don't know if that was a real thing or not, but there's definitely something big is going to happen with him.
Yeah, I think so. And it would be really strong in both good and bad ways if something happened to his family. That's for sure. Well, it's going to be, I think it's going to be a good movie. The directors are the guys behind the Captain America, the second film and third film, really good directors. I think they've got a great sense of directing the actors, but also of how to tell a really good story. So a lot of reason to be optimistic. If you've got questions or comments about the Avengers Infinity War or anything that you want to ask us or share an opinion with us, we want you to write us at feedback@shrinktank.com. And let's go to our final segment that we call our Doctor's Orders. These are things that we're personally enjoying in pop culture. Emma Kate, you start.
I was listening to Spotify recently and had some stuff randomly playing on a playlist. And I was shocked when I actually liked a country song. And then I went and looked at Casey Musgraves. Her new album is called Golden Hour. I hate country, but I actually really enjoyed this album. There's some great songs on there. Butterflies, Space Cowboy, High Horse. It's very soothing, calm. It's not, super fast paced, but she does a nice job blending classic country elements like the banjo and other things with, very modern twists. So really a solid album. I liked it.
You know who really likes that album?
Who?
Donald Trump.
Okay, well,
Golden Hour.
Hey now.
Okay.
All right, Frank. Moving along.
I strongly recommend the Netflix series of Lost in Space. Huge budget, lots of action, family story. It's so good. The effects are amazing. So check it out.
Jonathan.
You have HBO, you need to check out the documentary on Andre the Giant. It was like a little bit of a slice of my childhood watching Andre the Giant and the World Wrestling Federation, and he really was the biggest wrestler, both figuratively and literally, of his time and maybe of all time.
All right, that's going to do it for this edition of the Shrink Tank Podcast. You can check out shrinktank.com for articles and videos about all the things we're talking about and a whole lot more. You can also find links to our Doctor's Orders products, and you can follow us on Twitter @shrink_tank and like us on Facebook. For questions or comments, write us at feedback@shrinktank.com. We hope you will. Our producer and theme music composer is Sean Beck. For Emma Kate Wright, Jonathan Hederley, and Frank Gaskell in Charlotte, I'm Dave Verhagen in Nashville. Tell all your friends about us and make it a great week.
Shrink Tank.